Please.
Take it away.
Excellent. So I know there was a little bit of a switch around with weeks. So this week is email marketing. Eugene, who is our lovely guest speaker, he's more around the influencer side of things, but it's still all relevant for you guys. You'll be doing Influence Week next week, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, but I've got lots of people nodding at me. So yeah. So we've asked Eugene to come on today just to give a bit of an overview about what he's been up to and yeah, share some knowledge with you guys. So take it away. So Eugene, I don't know if you want to do a little bit of an introduction, a bit about your background to kick it off.
Yeah, so I've worked in digital marketing for 14 years now. I was traditionally sort of paid media. Well, I started by dipping my toe into SEO and then moved more into PPC. Until about I went freelancing about 2019, and around obviously that was great until sort of 2020 hit, and sort of things obviously went a bit wild with the world. But actually one thing that sort of opened up to me was I had a bit of viral success on Twitter, and that sort of opened me up to social media marketing more than just paid media. So whereas my background is very much sort of paid media, I suddenly started taking more interest in social media and being sort of in the sort of confines of your home sort of for most of the day during lockdown. Sort of the dopamine hit of social media presented itself to sort of an opportunity there to sort of, engage with people, and also like, yeah, sort of, understood a bit more about how to create viral content and engaging content. So off the back of that, I started moving a bit more towards social media. And what I tended to sort of speak about on social media was sort of football and sort of general, sort of trying to be funny, basically, to some varying degrees of success. I had a few sort of football related tweets that went viral. And off the back of that, I started working with a few football brands, sort of just smaller sort of retro shirt brands, sort of the mystery shirt ones you might have seen. And that just sort of gave me a sort of an introduction to sort of social media and sort of working with sort of within that space. Largely it was sort of Twitter focused, but as I sort of evolved and sort of understood the market and the sort of landscape of social media, sort of moved more into Instagram and TikTok more recently as well. Albeit I know it's sort of Influencer Week, and I'm not someone who tends to be in front of the camera. I tend to be sort of working on sort of content creation and working sort of the writing and sort of that's the strategy side of things more than the actual getting in front of the camera, because it's something that I'm not as comfortable with. But I like sort of coming with content ideas and sort of creation ideas and sort of testing them out and seeing how people respond to them. Now, so off the back of that, I've been working with a few podcasts as well. So one that I've been working with more sort of bit longer is one called the Cultures Football Podcast, and I think that's what sort of Tom mentioned about. I think I'm jumping ahead to the questions here, but yeah, to discuss how we create the viral trend essentially for that podcast and how we sort of went global essentially with a recent trend. And I also work with another podcast called the Screen Rock Podcast, which has grown massively over the last few months off the back of it's a podcast that sort of looks at the weirdest and worst content on the internet essentially. So it talks about like some of the people who have gone viral on sort of TikTok and Instagram and that side of things. So I work with a couple of tend to work sort of on the sort of football or sort of comedy side of things, but hopefully talking about how we create a viral trend and how we create content to reach our audience hopefully might help, depending on sort of what market you're in. It might sort of be able to replicate or look at how you can identify opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a quick question, Eugene. Sorry. How was it you got into that space? I know from your background, you kind of came more from the PPC side of things, and I know social media kind of tickled you fancy. Like,
Yeah.
did you know people within that industry before,
So
or was it quite a natural progression, or?
part of it was sort of because I worked in sort of digital marketing and sort of new people, so a couple of bits have been referrals,
Yeah.
and but also people have actually contacted me directly. They've said, we like your content, would you be willing to sort of write some sort of tweets and stuff? That's how I sort of started writing sort of tweets for people.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was a buzz actually when it's it when you get paid to tweet, it feels a bit more anxious because it's sort of when something bangs, it's great, but when only the likes trickle in, it's not doing great. You're like, oh God, this looks awful. So it is quite hit and miss and understanding what content works well. So yeah, a bit of it is being off referrals and also yeah, people get in touch with me directly and. I'm starting to put myself out there on LinkedIn as well of sort of, showing some of the work that I've been doing and sort of the results I've been doing has helped and people have got in touch again off the back of that. So yeah, like a couple of bits that have just come in now. Are slightly different to my normal experience, but I've started to learn about those markets and see if we can apply them. But yeah, a lot of it does come off like once you sort of build up your network, hopefully
Yeah.
then the referrals start coming in. And also, yeah, people I think the benefit of the social media space more than sort of the paid media space is PPC people don't tend to see your work as much because it's just sort of, it is the least like PPC has been my bread and butter for years, but it's the least cool form of digital marketing, unfortunately. As good as it is, it's an important part of the marketing mix. Social
Yeah.
media is still very much the cool new thing, and people do, if you've done a viral tweet or viral Instagram reel or TikTok or anything, people see that and they know that that they can relate that to. They can see the reach and the engagement, whereas they can't. It's unless you show them the sort of the
Less
stats from.
visible. Yeah, less
Yeah,
visible with I guess the PP.
Yeah, so the people have seen, when it's been from my own personal account,
Mm.
had like I mentioned, I had quite a few viral tweets that have been in sort of like BuzzFeed and the Poke and like their various news outlets and stuff. I managed to convince the BBC that with an April Fool's tweet that went viral, that the BBC thought it was real, that there was a new bar. I don't know if any of you from Manchester, but
Yeah.
quirky
A lot of
bar.
us actually.
Yeah, so one of the things that Manchester seems to have now is a new quirky bar popping up every 5 minutes. So I tweeted on April 1st that there was going to be a pandemic themed bar,
Oh
and I
gosh.
just put a few pictures from the pandemic, and the BBC contacted me saying, "Is this real? We want to talk about it on Radio 4." So off the back of stuff like that, you do tend to see that people then start noticing, and like I said, yeah, and like people then, as mentioned, I've got like because I've worked in the digital space for a while, I've got that sort of network as well that people have sort of recommended me to a few people as well.
Yeah, that's good. We speak quite a lot about networking, especially in Careers Week, which was I think 2 weeks ago now. It's gone so fast. So yeah, we speak quite a lot about networking and just how important it is for expanding your
Yeah,
work and staying in touch with people perhaps you've worked with and reaching out to new people. And we do try and get out to as many events and stuff as we can and also promote that within Basecamp because I do think it's a really good way of making connections and leads.
def yeah, definitely. I think having a community for your own sort of work and sort of people knowing what you're doing, I think really helps. And um I think LinkedIn is a great sort of channel for doing that. And I'm probably guilty of not posting much on LinkedIn as I should sometimes because, like I mentioned, if you get sort of referral work, it's great, but then sometimes it's good to still be making those contacts. And like, yeah, there's a lot of events in Manchester, particularly Manchester based. There's loads of sort of digital orientated events that I'd recommend getting out and about and just meeting people, and just sort of, understanding a bit more about not even just your section of social of section of digital of learning about the other areas and then it makes it a bit more easy to talk about those and sort of meet connections so that if someone needs something that you do you can sort of then they'll refer you or put you in touch with the right people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even just people on this course kind of tend to stay in touch with each other.
Yeah,
When we spoke before, we've got our Basecamp alumni, which is anyone who's kind of completed the course or graduated is on there, and we've got some people who are on the course as well. So it's quite a nice space to share bits of information and just stay in touch. We've had some learners work on projects together and work with each other and hire from each other. So
yeah,
it is kind of nice to see when that kind of networking continues.
yeah.
Like, with your, I know you mentioned one of your posts went viral. Was it a video or was it
So
on
yeah,
Twitter
it was.
or
It was I'm not sure how many sort of football fans we've got sort of on the call. It was a trend called the Barclaysman trend. So it was a football nostalgia trend based around noughties football, and noughties music sort of came into it as later sort of part of it. So it sort of evolved from what the podcast I work with is very much about, like football nostalgia, and it's very much talking about sort of retrospectively. Like, we don't bother talk it doesn't bother talking about anything that's going on in the game now or even last 5-10 years probably. It
Yeah.
focuses around what we call like the Barclays era, and what's that is from sort of 2001 I think to about 2015 I think we defined it as, and that is like the sort of peak Barclays as it's known, which sort of looks back at when football was a bit more like, even though it was sort of professional, it was footballers looking more like normal people. Like, now they're all like athletes and everything sort of stage managed, and there's still a bit more of a human element to it, and the sort of the game wasn't a sort of the joy wasn't sucked out of it. So what it came from, the podcast was always being focused around nostalgia, and we sort of built up this community, which I think is one thing to sort of talk about, is how building a community with your audience, even if it's with a brand or with it's a, like I mentioned, a sort of as a content creator, it's important to build up that audience who buy into what you say as well. So basically how it started was the international break in September. The international break football is usually really boring. They're the same boring topics discussed. So we were like, oh, let's do a Barclaysman World Cup. So it was like, you might have seen it on Twitter, like they do like, like loads of different World Cups. Like it'd be like, what's the best sitcom of the, what's the best fruit, what's the best, whatever. So we did a sort of to find out who was the most Barclays player of all time. And from that, it sort of grew into sort of morphed into something bigger. And we started doing these videos. So James, who's one of the podcast hosts, started doing a video called it was like asking my girlfriend if she remembers peak Barclaysman. And he was just like literally videos, 30 seconds, him asking her a really obscure footballer while they were going about the day. So it'd be like him driving the car. And they started getting hundreds of thousands of views. And that built up our Instagram and TikTok following, which we sort of wasn't as big as Twitter at the time. I think we grew about 3,500 on Instagram quickly, and about 2,000 on TikTok, and about 6,000 on Twitter. I think we grew quite quickly over the couple of weeks. But it was the video started to go along with the World Cup we were doing. And then there was another trend that sort of evolved from that, which was the Barclaysman. It was like a mashup with noughties music. So it would take highlights of a random player mixed with a noughties like indie tune. So it sort of hit that noughties nostalgia.
Yeah.
And that's when it really blew up, because all the clubs started getting involved. So we had Portsmouth, Wigan, Everton, Blackburn, like basically all the clubs, Bolton, all started doing their own videos and tagging us in. And then we started getting bigger content creators sort of getting in touch with us to be on the podcast. So we've had we had a guy called Chris O'Shea, who I admittedly hadn't heard of, but apparently he's on some Netflix show. And then a few other content creators with bigger following, like Ellis Platten, who's a big YouTuber, just won an award actually yesterday. And it started just growing and sort of becoming like this big evolving thing of the Barclaysman hashtag was at the center of it, and we were sort of the catalyst, I guess. And these sort of different elements we were doing around it, the video content, the World Cup, and just the general engagement we were seeing on across platform, that sort of caught the attention of the press as well. So it was crazy. We were getting like Talk Sport. We were on Independent. We did an interview for the New York Times recently did a piece on us. 442, a big football magazine, said we saved social media, so that was quite nice. So that was quite a nice quote to have. So we sort of seen this. It blew up, but it was on the back of a lot of groundwork we did to build up our audience. But the sort of we thought it would be big. We thought it would do quite well. We thought it'd be like, be good engagement. We didn't expect it to go as global as it did. But we'd always had we'd had a few viral tweets and a few viral videos and bits and pieces. But it's always been centered around that sort of football nostalgia element. So we did like a video of millennial fresher talking about footballers and stuff like that, and the stuff like that always did quite well. But this Barclaysman hashtag really caught fire. And if you look at the search terms, it just sort of flies up like that on I'll share the graph actually with Tor after the call. It just sort of shoots up.
Right.
So we did see a few brands try and copy it and not give us credit. Sky being one of them, just not to fire any shots at anyone. But yeah, there was a few brands that didn't really. Some of them really got aboard and sort of tagged us in and made sure we were known as the ones who created it. Others sort of tried to sort of steal it for themselves. But they got quite, it was because we built up a big community. We had them sort of fighting our corner, essentially,
Yeah.
just sort of saying, can you give these credit and stuff? So, I mean, a lot of it, I think there's probably a lot of social execs for these brands didn't even know where it came from. So I don't think they robbed it directly and didn't actually, I think it was just a case of it grew so quickly. They probably didn't know, some people didn't
The
know exactly
source
the plan.
was, yeah, they just saw it and liked it, and then probably
Yeah.
they'll
So
try and mimic it.
yeah, so it was just it just grew really quickly, and like I said, yeah, the a lot of the sort of news sources got in touch with us to sort of, I think Gaz Drinkwater, we spoke to him on BBC Radio Manchester, and then we've had other like the mentioned Talk Sport, and like the Mail did a piece, and Guardian, and a lot of them did it around the nostalgia element of it sort of really played a big part. And off the back of that, we've sort of obviously grew our own audience and started working with a few football related brands as well, sort of on a sort of sponsorship deals and stuff. So it's sort of really raised the profile and built it, sort of helped sort of grow the podcast really. But a lot of it, we've done a lot of the nurturing sort of work sort of 12 months previously. So I think what's important around when creating sort of or running a social account is finding your audience and speaking like them, I guess is the right way of putting it, sort of understanding what they're talking about and looking at how they talk about it as well. So the term Barclaysman comes from sort of a football Twitter thing where people refer to any sort of player from the noughties as the like a Barclaysman. So a proper Barclaysman isn't like Cristiano Ronaldo wouldn't be a Barclaysman because he's too good. But someone like Pedersen, who played for Blackburn, is sort of a good player, but played for sort of a average club. So it even touched into that of what the define. A lot of it was discussing what defines a Barclaysman, and we had sort of people saying, "Is this player a Barclaysman?" And be like, "No, he won the league, so he can't be counted." And then like it spawned a lot of conversations, and that's what I think is really good around sort of. When you sort of create something on social media that takes off is the bits that sort of grow from it as well, and how you sort of lean into them, I guess. And how we sort of and how we sort of lend into it and sort of used it, like I said, to grow one, the sort of the quality of guests that we've started getting, and also we've now moved into a studio. Well, we're renting a studio, but we've started being able to afford to do certain things. So we've got just recorded loads of new content to put out soon. So it's been initially it was like a Zoom podcast.
Yeah.
But because we've got sponsors, like but not saying we're making loads of it, we're making enough to now go in a studio from time to time. So it's it was just sort of something that caught fire really off the back of understanding our audience, and then coming up with a sort of trend that really sort of captured their imagination really. And I think the international break was the perfect time for it because there was no like Premier League football on TV or anything. It was all international games, which tend to be quite boring. So the conversation usually goes back to really boring, like Messi or Ronaldo conversation and stuff. But this really sort of captured the imagination. And I think again, that's something I think when thinking about content is thinking about the time that people are going to be like a lot of social media. You see a lot of job advertisers they'll say, "Oh, being able to plan a content calendar," and I think that's a bit old school. I think social media now is so much more reactive, and I think being able to create content that captures the moment really quickly, particularly sort of TikTok as well, which I think has a shorter shelf life in terms of the content. I think sometimes, I think being able to respond quickly and create that content that captures the right moment or is posted at the right time can help. And I think like I think sometimes if you just sort of do it too formulaic can sort of take away the actual creativeness of it. So you think, oh, we've got to do a post because it's National Puppies Day or whatever, or some random day that actually your audience doesn't care about, and you're trying to shoehorn in. But if you find the gap, like I think I mentioned on the call earlier to when we caught up earlier, that like Christmas period last year was just really, really fruitful time. So we got about, I think we had around about 12 million views in like that's 3 or 4 days, and we averaged about 10 million views a month on Twitter. So that period is like really sort of captive audience. So it's understanding as well the time to post these things as well. So if you've got an idea for a trend or a sort of an idea for something that you think will work on social media, I would say work out when your audience is best likely to respond to it as well. So if it is that you're, if you're B2B client, for example, actually, is it that people are going to be on social media? You might think that your audience is only 9 to 5, but actually they might be checking LinkedIn at the evening when they're sort of, depending on what their job is, or, on social, on whatever platform you're targeting. Sometimes it's understanding actually when people respond best to your content, and also it's engaging with the right stuff. There's brands like Ryanair and Specsavers and brands that you might have seen on social media, like responding to who are quite playful with their approach to social media, and they capture a lot of the trends because they've sort of built a personality about their uh, uh, social media platform, where others can't get away with it. I think some brands try and do it, and because of the nature of the brand, they actually just get a load of abuse. So I think sometimes I actually understand as well, like, is it worth it? Like, I think Ryanair, because they've lent into an Aldi as well, brilliant at leaning into their, like, I don't know what to describe, like the foibles, I guess, in terms of what people sort of make to make fun of them about, and sort of lent into it. And I think if you can do that as a certain brand, or depending on what sort of business you're working with, I think that can really help. So yeah, I think just to sort of to circle back to sort of how we went viral, I think a lot of it was built on that sort of community building, and initially being engaged and being seen, and the people who had started following us were the sort of the right people to make it grow, really, because they were the people that were talking about what we would want to talk about with the Barclaysman trend.
Yeah, so you found your tribe almost.
Yeah, that's
And,
exactly it. Yeah,
and then
yeah.
I guess it's just a lot about mirroring communication, or like tone of voice is very important as well in terms of how you speak to your audience and how they're speaking
Definitely.
stuff. So
Yeah, I think.
that's
Yeah, I
really
think tone. Yes, I think tone of voice definitely. I think, like I said, the Barclays, like the phrase Barclaysman is like born out of the way people talk about these players,
yeah,
and I think showing that they understood that sort of that the terminology, and so the tone of voice that people
yeah,
would talk about these players, and I think that's what really sort of captured the audience and built an engaged audience as well. And it didn't just seem unnatural. Like, I think I mentioned some brands that copied it, and it seemed a bit unnatural. They were starting to talk like that, so it's sort of like, I think it didn't really work as well for them.
yeah,
And I think we actually seen like the clubs that did the videos, Portsmouth, Wigan, um, Bolton. They aren't as corporate in their social media output already. Whereas
yeah,
there's some football clubs that didn't bother doing it, like United and Liverpool. But because they use their social media a bit differently, because they're going after an international audience, they post like more. It's almost like press releases. They don't post as
not
playful.
as
Whereas
playful. Yeah,
yeah, whereas I
they're
think the
not
smaller
playful.
clubs can get away with it because they're largely catering to like a smaller audience. So I
Yeah,
guess that's something to take on board as well. That if you are sort of working with a brand and managing their social, it is just being conscious of, it's great being able to be and that's why I quite like working with some sort of football brands, and sort of brands that sort of I can inject my own personality in terms of you know use of memes and stuff like that. That's quite low hanging fruit, really, but it works because you can do it with sort of brands that are tailored towards that sort of audience. Whereas some brands, obviously, it'd be a bit more difficult, or content creators or whoever you're working with,
mm,
to use that tone of voice. So yeah, it's understanding that tone of voice that your audience speak with, and trying to not to try and parrot, but trying to sort of make it natural
yeah.
to them as well.
Yeah, definitely, and lean into it. No, that sounds great. I've got someone asking for the podcast link. So I was going to
Oh
say,
yeah,
would you be able to share some of the links to like viral content in your podcast later on, and then I can share it with the learners? That'd be
yeah.
brilliant.
I'll drop a
I'm
link to
sure
the
they're more
YouTube,
interested to look at it.
and some of the socials, and a few of the news articles as well that sort of the
Perfect.
Barclays featured in. And a few I'll send you all the links, and you can forward them on.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll share them out with everyone. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you for that. Has anyone got any questions for Eugene? Oh, we've got a few hands up. Naya. Oh, you're on mute.
Wow, rookie mistake. Yeah, sorry, I had a couple of questions just off the back of what you've been saying, that I feel like our learners might find useful. It seems like you've really nailed kind of your niche, the area that you really want to kind of specialize in as a freelancer. How did you come about that? Did you start off with that, or did you take on any client in the beginning and then you kind of slowly weaved your way into that?
Yeah, so I think I had a bit of a luxury of because I've worked, I still do some PPC client activity. So I think I've been in the fortunate position of sort of any social media stuff. It's been anything that I wanted to take on. Whereas, yeah, I think, and I sort of knew what my skill set was based around, sort of, sort of football or comedy that I sort of worked with in terms of my own sort of social media. So a lot of it was I had the sort of luxury a little bit of being able to pick and choose because I was doing sort of paid media stuff on as well. So I could sort of think, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I can bring on a social media account and sort of lose a little bit of PPC because I did
Mm.
sort of agency support stuff. So some of it was sort of I had the looks, but I have been speaking to I mentioned actually I've been speaking to on the call earlier actually that I've been speaking to um a pet sitter app. And now I'm allergic to pets, so I've never owned a pet. But I know that market is really big, and what I've been doing is trying to get to understand how people like what talking about is that tone of voice, essentially, like looking at how people interact. And although that's probably not my skill set in terms of understanding the pet and knowing about a pet, being a pet owner, I
Mm.
think understanding how people talk on social media and sort of how the sort of content that people respond well to is something that I can sort of replicate the trend, and really sort of I think it's quite an easy audience to reach for that. So I'll still take on a client if I feel that it's I've got the one I can sort of be a bit sort of like I mentioned, a bit more playful, a bit more, you know, let me do what I want to do, so not
Yeah.
be too like, you know, controlled and sort of be quite interactive with as the brand online, but it has tended to be more sort of football related, just off the back of I mentioned sort of it came off the back of my own Twitter content
Yeah.
and a few brands I sort of spoke to, like a mystery shirt one and a retro shirt brand, who sort of wanted to reach the audience I was reaching. So
Mm.
yeah, I would say if to anyone sort of looking to take on sort of freelance social media stuff, I would say and this is off the back of actually when I went freelance as a paid media person as well. I took on any work initially because I was freelance and a bit sort of, oh God, I've got to take on work, can't turn it down. And people will tend to do that, I think. But I think being able to sort of push back a little bit and sort of actually ask the right questions initially to clients or potential
Yeah.
clients to understand one, are you the right person to work with their brand, and also will you have the best, will the relationship work? Because I have actually had it with even with a sort of football client I was working with, they give too much pushback on anything I was suggesting, and a lot of it was like, okay, I mean, I thought I had some really good ideas, and I've actually replicated them for a different client, but and have worked, but they were pushing back and they're taking too long to approve, and we ended up sort of stopped working together, based on the back of the communication wasn't quite there. The relationship was good at the start, and it was they were actually sound. It was just that they were taking too long to approve stuff, and it can be a bit of a. So I think understanding the client initially and understanding what they're willing for you to do, particularly on the social media side of things, because
Yeah.
you do need to be you do need to be really reactive, and that's where a lot of my success has been off like reactive content, and and a lot of it can be a case of making sure that you capture it at the right time. And if it has to go through a longer approval process, and it gets approved 2 days later, then it's a bit sort of gone really. As we've
Yeah.
seen it with the Barclaysman trend, actually. There was I think someone posted it really late on. It was like a few weeks later, and it was like it's a bit done now. Even we were like, why are people still doing this? So I think a
Yeah.
lot of it is just understand. And when you first speak to someone, try and understand, how they like to work. Is it conductive with how you like to work? And
Mhm.
also just like, trying to feel them out as in terms of what they want to get. And that's like I said, it can be hard to turn down work initially. We've just gone freelance,
Yeah.
and also just looking, don't sell yourself short as well. If their rates, particularly when you start out, I was guilty of this as well, where you go, if someone try to knock you down on price because you want to get the work, you'd say yes. So I think
Yeah.
it's just trying to do as much foreground work initially in the opening conversation stage to understand
Yeah.
a bit more about their business, and also if they'll be willing to work how you, well, your process, will it be matched to how they work in terms of their social media strategy?
Yeah, yeah. Just a follow-up question on what you mentioned on price. I've had a few questions from some learners about pricing and how to do that as a freelancer. How did you go about looking at that side of things? How did you know how much to price stuff? Do you do it per project? Do you do it per hour? Like, what's your thought process around that?
Yeah, so I tend to it depends on how I'm working really, because if it's doing contract work for an agency, I would tend to work to a day rate, and I think I tended to work out sort of what I want to achieve per hour, and sort of how longevity of the work as well. And I tend to, if it's a shorter term project, slightly charge a little bit more. But if it's going to be, if someone says it's going to be a 6-month contract, and I know I've got locked in like 2 days a week for 6 months or whatever, I'll happily sort of slightly come down on it. I'll admittedly say that when sort of COVID kicked in and I was starting to get London work, I did add a little bit of London tax on. So because I knew they paid more contractors more, so I did charge a little bit more because I knew the rate was higher in London.
Yeah.
So so it was a little bit to bump up the rate a little bit if it was a London agency.
I think London people are used to paying the London tax.
Yeah, well, that's what yeah, it was. There was still probably less than so yeah. But I tend to sort of work out what I want to achieve in terms of what hourly. But if it's project based, so when I manage an account, sometimes I work out how many hours I'd expect to see. So for example, if I think, oh, I need 8 hours a week to work on this or whatever, I work out there and build a rate off that really. I used to do management fee based on spend for paid media, but I think that's a bit antiquated because it used to be like 10% of spend. But I think it's I don't really work off that anymore because it felt sometimes difficult if as an e-com client that was growing, scaling really quickly, and obviously the fee was going up quickly. Sometimes the work wasn't warranted because it was there wasn't as if especially if it was smaller maybe it wasn't the amount of hours needed that was sort of the spend, the budget there, the fee may be justified. So I tend to work in hours now than sort of a percentage of fee. But some people still work to that model of paid media. But for social media, I tend to work out how many hours they need and sort of factor in stuff like you mentioned reactive. So I'll tend to say, okay, I'll have sort of set hours in terms of strategy, and then maybe sort of reactive hours. So like particularly going back to sort of obviously the football market, or if you work in something where there's like events and like going on that you might want to be tweeting about or posting Instagram about or whatever, that are posting videos on TikTok about, it's having that reactive element that you can actually do that it's got the pain that's covering that as well. But yeah, I tend to sort of try and factor in the amount of hours that I tend to think they'll need per week, and then sort of work out the rate from that.
That's cool. That's really, really useful. And I'm sure a lot of learners learned from that. So we've also got Marie, I think, with a hand up. Did you want to ask your question?
Hi, Eugene. Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's really good to hear how you tapped into something that people obviously felt and it resonated with them with the Barclays men. I wondered whether, because I always find it interesting when a brand sponsorship kind of gets taken on and means something else. I wondered whether you'd ever had any kind of interaction with Barclays themselves and whether they kind of bought into it too, or whether it's maybe less of a good association for them.
Well, yeah, we were unsure about this one actually, but we did reach out and left on red. But we were unsure because we were like, obviously it is using their brand name, but it's not in a sense. It's quite a strange one. But we did reach out to them, and obviously, it was. But yeah, we've not had anything back from them. But yeah, it's the brands we tend to work with. Work with some sort of smaller sort of football related brands. But yeah, Barclays themselves didn't. We thought they might have been interested because the amount of search volume there was around the name and stuff, they could have easily done like quite a lot around it. But no, they didn't get involved, didn't get in touch, and neither did any of the brands that sort of copied it. Like Sky I mentioned, you know, a lot of them try to just sort of to steal it, I guess. It's not, it's difficult one because obviously it's not stealing, but it was a concept. But they didn't sort of show any recognition or try and work with us on that side of things. It was sort of the smaller brands that sort of got in touch. So yeah, which I guess lends itself to the day the Barclays so we are an affiliate for a big retro shirt brand, and we just messaged them on the day it was just about to start, saying, "Oh, can we have an exclusive Barclaysman code? Because I think it's going to be quite big." Didn't get back to us, and they sort of think they missed out on the really big opportunity there. But I think what you might find actually is, I think with bigger brands, and if you work with bigger brands, in terms of like freelancing or whatever, there's a lot more due diligence and sort of compliance you have to go through. So it takes a lot slower for things to get moving when you work with bigger brands. When you work with smaller brands, you can be much more reactive because, for example, I mentioned some of the football brands I've worked with, and I'll just drop the MD like a WhatsApp message saying it's okay to post this. Yeah, cool, done. You know, that goes start straight away. But even working with a bigger brand, it could be a case of that could go to the market manager, doesn't see it the next day, and then it doesn't get passed by their sort of, you know. So sometimes the bigger brands actually they're late to the trends because they have to go through a lot of like internal stuff. So even if you look at do you remember the one Curry started? I think Curry's were the originator. Our Gen Z workers, the Gen Z employee wrote our script.
Somebody was talking about this in the chat last week, I think.
Yeah.
Kate, yeah.
So Curry's are amazing, and a few of brands started doing it. Beamish, which is they did one a really good one, which is like, I don't know if everyone's been to Beamish. It's like a Victorian village. You can sort of go in. It's great. I went about 3 school trips there. If you live in the North of England, you go all the time. But yeah, the Northeast. But what he found is some brands done it like a few weeks later, and it just looked shit. Like it just didn't look good when like a brand was doing that same trend. So yeah, Beamish is amazing. But yeah, so I think it's with bigger brands, it's sometimes they jump on things too late, or they don't jump on them at all because they've missed the boat. So I think if you're working as a freelancer with a small business, sometimes it can be brilliant for jumping on trends, particularly like TikTok and Reels, creating quick video content. That's great. But if you're working with a bigger brand, sometimes it can take a bit later, and like it does look a bit shit when it's just like a few weeks, and it's past the sell by date, I guess, and how quickly, particularly on TikTok, how quickly trends move. Like it just looks so outdated. If Barclays just didn't get back to us, and none they didn't seem to do anything around it, which I feel is a real missed opportunity. But it might have been that it was pitched internally and just never got to the point, because by the time it's sort of been proved, it was just too late, really.
Yeah. That's a really good answer. Thank you.
Brilliant. Got a couple of questions in the chat. I got one from Catherine. Do you know any freelance agencies for account managers?
Account man in terms of like what sort of just general?
Catherine, are you still on? I
Yes,
don't know if you want to expand a little bit.
Yeah, well, my background's agency. I used to work for a creative agency in business development, and I used to account manage as well. I've had quite a large career break bringing up my kids, and now I'm at a loss of what to do. But I'm thinking freelance would be a really good way, even if it was just a week to cover sickness or a couple of months contract, would be a really nice way for me to balance, to have maybe time off in the holidays with the kids. Not necessarily every week off, but 5 months going back full time when you've got kids it's quite a lot, because my husband doesn't get any time off. So so just managing projects, or basically.
Yes. So I think I don't know any sort of so when I do sort of some of the paid media stuff, a lot of the work I've done sort of freelances sort of with agency support. So because I started at a big agency, and a lot of people have gone on to be like head of PPC and here and there, a lot of people are sort of senior, and because the recruitment process is quite long now, for might be a 3-month period, might waiting for someone. So I tend to fill in sort of gaps and sort of work with people. And I'm still sort of helping someone at the moment, actually, in an agency. So while they're recruiting, they do tend to use sort of freelancers. Now, I don't know any that sort of use just freelancers, but I think what it might be worth doing is reaching out to particularly Manchester agencies, because it's so many, and the people move around so often, and like I said, like people are taking, people do take time off, like holidays, and sort of, people might be on maternity, and like they might want someone short term on a contract basis. So I think I would say reach out to some agencies and just say, put yourself out to reach out to like the operations director or MD directly, or someone who you think might be the decision maker, and just see if they need anyone, sort of, or let them know you're available ad hoc. Similarly, there's sites like Juno I've used for a few contracts in the past for agency support. And they sometimes advertise that account managers needed for like a short-term project. It might be that they've got a new client on board and they've not got the account management team in place yet, so they might need someone to come in and sort of fill that gap. So Juno's a good account, although it's a bit arduous setting it up on there, because they are quite rigorous in like everything you've got to fill in, but it is really good. It has like a job brief board and stuff. Worksome isn't quite as good, but I would recommend, actually, there's an agency called Crowd. I've not used them in a while, but they have like a freelance like support team. And how Crowd works is you can basically they'll put out like, oh, we need someone to do this, this, and this, and you can sort of guess almost pitch for it, say I'm available these amount of hours, and they've got like they call the Crowd is, so the Crowd network, and you have to do some like tests first, like to sort of prove that what I'm not sure what the account management want to be, but they have loads of different. I used to, when I first started freelance, I used to do sort of PPC tasks for them, so I'd recommend looking at Crowd as well, because you can then just choose as and when you do stuff. And I know actually I think there is quite a lot of people who do stuff around just sort of ad hoc stuff, and it's sort of, you can do it around other things. So there's a few agencies I'd recommend sort of reaching out to agencies, because I mean, they are always sort of, they have quite like, the nature of the business, I think, is that digital marketing, that people do move around quite a lot, and there's a lot of new agencies popping up, but there is also the need some of the skill set to sort of fill in there and then. So, and then you could sort of pick up recurring work, fill in quite a lot. So I'd say reach out to people who decision makers at agencies, and also I'd definitely say look at Juno and Crowd, but it's Crowd, CROUD, not W, so it's like Crowd with a U. They're based in Shrewsbury randomly, but they're a massive agency, global agency. But they've got this Crowd network that they use for freelancers, and I think that could be ideal for what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I've made notes. I'm also, can I just ask, I'm trying to place your accent.
I grew up in the Lake District.
Oh, the Lake District. Okay.
But I've lived, I lived in Manchester for 10 years. I went to uni in Stoke and then lived in Chester, and now I'm living in the northeast. So moved around.
Well, when you first started out, because I'm from the northeast as well, when you first came on, you sounded like you were Geordie, but then I was like, oh no, it's not.
I live in Hexham now, so I'm probably
lovely,
nice. It's nice. So I moved here last year. I lived in Manchester. That's how I sort of got into the digital sort of world.
Yeah. Oh well, enjoy Northumberland. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is really nice. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, fantastic. And then just another one. Can you share us an example of your content that went viral, or share some links? I'm happy.
I can send some over.
Yeah, I'll what I'll do is I'll do a little follow-up post for you guys, just with some of the links to the podcast and some various other bits and bobs, so you can have a nosy afterwards.
Yeah, sure. I'll send over some links of sort of bits of content, and and then sort of obviously like how it's bits that be featured in the news and stuff. So I'd like bits featured like Daily Mail and Guardian and
brilliant. Yeah, I think that would be great. Everyone can have a bit more of a look into that. That's great. Has anyone else got any other questions? Can't see any hands up.
Anything else in the chat either?
I don't think so. No, I don't think there's any more questions. that's everything. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Eugene, and thank you
No, it's
very
been
much
good.
for sharing your time with us. It's been brilliant having you on today. Oh, that's nice. A message from Meg just saying really enjoyed listening to you. And I think everyone's really looking forward to check out your podcast and content as well. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with me, and I'll share with the rest of our learners. But thank you so much for coming on this afternoon.
Cheers,
So
guys.
good.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers,
Enjoy
thanks.
the rest of
All
your
of the
afternoon.
love in
Bye.
the
Thanks,
chat.
guys.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was good.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah.
really interesting. Thanks for that, Tom.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah.
It's nice when we get like freelancers on, because then a lot of people have like freelance based questions and then they tend to answer most of them, which is really good.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's really good to have a mix. And I think this cohort in particular, I think we've got around a 50-50 split. From what I can see for freelancers, small business owners to job